Hey everybody. Uh it is absolutely frigid outside. Like freezing. It's probably the coldest day that is going to be of this entire year, and it's like 2026 just started. It's ridiculous. Sometimes I wish I was like badass enough to live in Alaska. And I love the snow. I love four seasons. I love watching the snowfall. I think it's one of the most beautiful things to just watch the snowfall. It literally turns life into like this magical snow globe. However, I just don't think I'm cut out for it. I'm so over it. But I was thinking about, you know, life and everything going on. And I don't know, I'm starting to feel really good again. I had a period, maybe it's the weather, I don't know, where I get, really contemplative, lost in my head, pretty melancholy. And oh my God, Mazzy has come back again. He's like a recurring co-host. And I just like wonder, what's the point? Is it going to work out? I'm inundated with questions, and it feels like my life is kind of like an anonymous brick wall dead end sometimes. And so I was thinking, like, what is the one of the big things that I have done right in my life thus far? And the big thing for me is addiction. Great people die every day. I was really, really lost in addiction. I mean, it was like hardcore for over a decade. Really lost in the trenches, which is to say the trenches of self-loathing. And I turned that around. Like, how did I do that? And just using that format, because that's a huge thing, using that one super success story in my own life for myself with future endeavors. Like I said before, I kind of, I guess, was pretty naive, or maybe just flat out ignorant about life. Like, I thought kind of once I was able to get sober that things were going to kind of fall into place. And for a while they did. But, everything in life changes and everything's evolving. And if you stay too long in one place, stagnation sets in. And if you're scared to move, it's not like sobriety meant like an end goal. It was actually just a beginning. And once I found a groove that worked for several years, it didn't mean that it wasn't, that it wasn't meant to change or going to or supposed to. My hair's driving me crazy. And so I've just been kind of dealing with that, like how to live life on my own terms. That's kind of like the big question I always come back to. And so I was looking at like addiction recovery from hardcore substance abuse and use into someone who more or less, I never feel, I'm not going back to that person that I was before. I'm just not. And I know the ways I've changed. So like, I'm kind of looking at it for myself, like, how did I do that? And applying it with everything else, with my career, relationships, self-respect, all of it. And, there's two ways to answer any question of like a how-to. It's just the more philosophical, inner psychological answer. And then there's like the actual steps, like A to G or whatever. And, I know what I did, began to journal, start a meditation practice, get a dog, paint your toenails. I did that just the other day, and it's like amazing. Just like tiny little things like that, like will kind of just help enough. It'll be like a little breadcrumb on this self-creating path to sanity. There are those things, but it comes back to it's wild, a freaking mindset. And there's this school of thought. It's like, what in the hell is this? What is this? What is this? What is this life? This reality? And there's a school of thought that this is the dream, and when we die, we actually wake up to some truer truth. And that makes sense because, like, I think everything, we are like living metaphors. We are living spiritual metaphors. And I heard it asked about in a theological context, one of the most profound, mind-blowing questions I have ever encountered And like I said, it was in a theological context, so that much made it that much more profound. It was just because the Bible, for example, is a metaphor, you say it is a metaphor hypothetically, that doesn't mean that it's not real. Metaphors are real. It's just they're real in a different way. And it's true. It's like, wow, and I think people like me that would look at things and be like, oh yeah, like that literally happened. Okay. And just brush it off. But, just like the butterfly, from a caterpillar, like all of these things are metaphors, but it's like when something just like fits. And when we look at life, I think is kind of like, we are these spiritual entities. And I heard once that spirituality, it's either going to be esoteric or exoteric. And I really love that because, as someone who's very esoteric, and esoteric practices, has been an integral part of my sobriety, but really my stability, my mental health, my entire life, having any semblance of peace and harmony. It's been in large part because of kind of this, the more esoteric side of things. Even like the power of now, though, a lot of like more conservative fundamentalists, even people within my own family, a lot of people are like, oh, that's witchcraft. That's, ooh, you don't want to mess with that. And, beliefs are tricky. Everyone has their own opinions. Everyone has their own beliefs and their own vantage point. But from my vantage point, really, that's all that matters. From my point of view, something's not going to be dark, witchy, demonic, etc. You can feel that darkness. And then they'll say, well, the devil's a liar. I don't know. It's a whole thing. But, numerology, the symmetry of life, even like tarot, and, it's a slippery slope, but I'm just speaking for myself. I'm not trying to, convert anyone. But for me, that has been an integral part of my sobriety, maintaining sobriety. And like I said, really overall being able to live. Because that was always the bigger problem, how to live, how to fucking live with yourself. When you wake up, my God, I spent the first 18 years of my life off and on, no exaggeration, if not longer, really into my 20s, now that I think about it, where I would wake up and be like, man, dreaming was my favorite part of the day. Now that's over. I mean, what a sad way to live. And it wasn't until I encountered my first real death in real life, meaning unexpected death by a young person, when my first, real boyfriend in adulthood, that wasn't someone I knew, like from high school, when they committed suicide when I was 22, that was like the first time I really was confronted with the gravity of death. And, man, really getting lost in the sauce here, and I kind of lost my train of thought. Damn it. I just totally lost it. But yeah. Well, anyway, the point is that, the numerology and dreaming was my favorite part of the day. And that's a sad way to live. And it wasn't until Paul died that I realized, it's kind of like the hypocrisy of suicide, thinking that sleeping is your favorite part of the day, or romanticizing death. It's that kind of inherent hypocrisy, because we only have those romantic ideals from the contrast of being awake. And when you actually commit suicide or go to sleep, you don't say, oh man, I can really embrace this wonderful time. You don't feel anything. It's only, you wouldn't have something else as your favorite part of the day if it wasn't for the thing that you were in now, which is waking life. And so, how to live, trying to take these principles that have allowed me to kind of begin to live at the age of my mid-30s, 34 to present. I'll be 42 this year. So I feel like life is kind of new, and I've been in a rut for a while, because it's a lot is changing. It's felt like weight has been on me, and life has been a question mark. And I really have had to get used to those question marks and understand that that is an ongoing thing. We're never going to have the answers, and some people need to create a life where there are as few question marks and as much stability as possible, because that is what works for them. But that isn't necessarily going to work for you, and it doesn't work for me. I have to kind of forge my own path and get comfortable in the change and get comfortable in the question marks. And that the esoteric versus the exoteric, it's not versus, it's just like two different points of view. It was explained that the esoteric is just an inner relationship with God, with the God of your definition, and an exoteric is the opposite. It is an external relationship, where you kind of look at God as something outside of yourself, to attain to or aspire to or whatever, want to get close to, that is outside of you. But I had a priest tell me when I was 17, and my mother forced me to go to this thing called Tech, Teens Encounter Christ, and it was the last place I wanted to be. And they tried to break you. That was part of like this 48, 72 hour retreat thing, was that they try to break you. No clocks, no sunlight, like it completely, to like gonna get you to lose track of time. It was supposed to be peaceful and reconnecting everyone there with God, but it was just me, my best friend, and like a couple other people who didn't have a relationship with God. And I just felt like it was one of the dirtiest times in my life that I had ever felt, because I was surrounded by like 100 youth people, other teenagers from all over, like, I guess tri-state area or whatever, who had this like deeply personal relationship with God. And I was just like sitting in this silence, and I heard nothing, I felt nothing, I never did. I was just so over it. And I just felt like I was being judged, condemned, scorned for not having a relationship. And the priest told me, when it was just this one-on-one forced confession, I told him that I was honest, which was a rarity. I'd never been honest in confession before, truly honest. I said, I don't feel it. Now what? I don't feel it. You think I don't want to feel it? I do, but you can't feel what you can't feel, correct? And he said God would be in the last place I looked. All I had to do is be open when God comes, be open and God will come, but it will be in the last place you will look. And internally was the last place to look for everything. So I'm trying to approach going forward with being someone who wants to do something with writing. I'm just going to write and continue writing until the day I drop dead. I'm just going to look out as journaling and keep submitting. And, so there's that. With my relationship, it's like, don't get sad, get mad, don't get mad, get divorced. That should be a bumper sticker, because that's my motto and I'm sticking to it. Because, you can either settle for bullshit and less than you deserve, or you can actually like define that for yourself. And, with recovery, addiction recovery, translating to now, future problems, all of it, it's a trinity. We are the trinity. Like I said, I feel that we are these walking metaphors. A lot of spiritual people say we are eternal spiritual beings having a temporary human experience. That makes a lot of sense as well. And while we are here, like I was saying the other day, we can either look at it from, it's all destined. There are certain things that are destined, in which case it's out of our hands or it's in our hands. And I like to think it's the latter, and that's all we can go by, is just do what we want to the best of our ability, right? And have this like Trinity perspective that we are walking embodiments of something divine, the mind, the body, the spirit. Life, all this shit's crumbling down. It's really hilarious. And it's a little bit scary because it's all we've known, but it's happening. We can't control it. That's why I say screw the protest and the protesters. If you're going to pick something, why not pick something that you can get your hands on, and instead of just like spending one more second caring about someone else's cause, especially when that cause is the fucking government. Please, go work in an animal shelter, go, do something like meaningful, get your hands dirty, like literally in the dirt of earth. Grounding is a big one in the spring for me, like putting my bare feet on the ground. that's our soul, mind, body, and spirit. You know, so much of this life is all about just the mental, like telling us who we are, telling us who we should be, telling us what to think, and like to turn that inward and kind of define that for myself. That's what, you know, the mind, the body, and the spirit. And I do not think it's a coincidence that um you know, so many people are lacking a connection with themselves, so they're therefore lacking a spiritual connection, therefore they are that much more susceptible to being like, you know, just these little worker bee puppets that are going to, like, you know, do whatever, right? But the body too, it can also be a coincidence that I'm feeling optimistic for the first time in so many days, and it's also the first time where I've kind of turned a corner with my dieting. I was just, you know, eating Oreos, eating this, eating that, you know, having a few bites here and there, like past, I knew damn good and well was out of my intermittent fasting window. And now that I'm back to eating within my fasting window, my mind feels better, my soul feels better. It's, you know, it's a beautiful thing if we let it. So that's what I'm trying to tell myself. We are the Trinity. Y'all take it easy.